in national and international conferences. He has coordinated international conferences, organized national level workshops, and delivered guest lectures. He is a recognized supervisor for Anna University, currently guiding 5 PhD scholars and completed 4. His area of interest is design and control aspects of electrical machines, electrical vehicles, and power converters. He has completed a SERP project titled Design and Development of Hybrid Switched Reluctance Motor Drive, approximately 23 lakhs under Fast Track scheme for young scientists during 2015 to 2018. He is the co-principal investigator for the project titled Design and Development of Permanent Magnet Assistant Reluctance Motor Drives for Pump Application, funded by SERB. Cost is 21 lakhs 20,000. I really happy to welcome you, sir, for our session. We'll be handling the title Overview of Machine Learning Approaches for Power Quality Disturbance Classification. Kindly handle the session, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Is the screen visible?
Yes, sir. It's visible,
okay.
Sir.
Am I audible? Audio is correct, no, ma'am? Audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thanks, ma'am, for the introduction. So this session, I will be handling on machine learning approaches for power quality disturbance classification. So I will be touching upon few algorithms by which we can classify the power quality events. So my outline of my presentation is introduction, why power quality issues are there, as the Somasundaram sir has been discussing about the power quality issues and converter interfaces, why power quality issues occur, and what are the causes and impact of poor power quality, and how do we classify the power quality events, and what are the procedures involved, and I will just explain how to classify the power quality events. So we all know that the increasing use of distributed energy resources like wind energy, solar energy has led to the formulation of your microgrid or smart grid, and associated with it we have large number of power electronic interfaces which have become inevitable to interface these sources with the loads or with the utility. So when we interface all these sources, there are certain advantages and there are certain disadvantages. So the rapid development in semiconductor devices have emerged as one of the potential contenders for using the wide variety of renewable energy applications. So we have interfaces with respect to grid or grid-tied inverters, grid-tied converters are available. All these are possible with the help of power electronics. But even though there are power electronic interfaces, there are some associated problems. And there are some challenges in these microgrids and in these smart grids technologies. So this is actually how an interface is done with the help of a hydro generator, with the help of a wind generator and all those things. So what has happened is, with the penetration of all these smart grids and all these renewable energy sources, okay, as I said earlier, okay, there has been a development in the power electronic interfaces, okay, for interfacing your distributed energy sources with respect to your utility grid. And because of these interfaces, the utility that we are going to use, or that the utility that we are using in our day-to-day application, is changing. This is how the interface is done. It is similar to the previous diagram. We have a solar energy, we have battery source, we have vehicle charging, okay, all these things. We have cogeneration, we have hydropower plant. All these things are interfaced with the help of converters, and because of these interfaces, now the production is become a important aspect. It is not only the renewable source which plays a very important part. So there are different players, okay, which make this suitable. Okay, so solar means you need to install a solar power plant. That is, you need to have a design, you need to manufacture the equipment, You need to know the utility, what kind of utility is going to feed, whether it is I'm going to use a LED lamp, what kind of lamp is there, okay? And all these things play a very important role. So there is not only a single player, there are a lot of players involved in this system, in a microgrid system. Okay, starting from, as I said, starting from a solar panel manufacturing company, starting from a designer, all these players are vital. Each and every stage of a microgrid or each and every stage of the installation tends to become vital. And of course, the end user, as the consumers, we need to provide them with quality power. So that is very important. And what happens when we do all these interfaces, the major problem or the major challenges is, what topology should I choose? What type of converter should I use? Whether it is a solar system, or whether it is a wind generation system, or whether it is any other utility, or whether it is a fuel cell, what kind of converter is choosable? How should I connect the different sources? That again becomes a problem. That needs to be a good thing. There needs to be a good understanding of how we are going to connect different sources, what control strategy that I am going to use, and what are the energy storage devices that I am going to use, how I am going to give a protection and grounding scheme, and what are the power quality issues that can come, okay, or that can be expected, okay, and how do I manage that, and how am I going to communicate with all the spinning reserve, non-spinning reserve, all these things, and how am I going to protect all these things, physical and cyber security. So it is advantageous. The developments in semiconductor technology, the developments in power electronics technology has led to the evolution of the microgrids and smart grids, but there are certain challenges. And one of the important challenges that researchers have been working on is power quality, how to improve the power quality. And there are a wider range of solutions for improving power quality as well. The control and topology also plays a very important role. Okay, but today our focus is on power quality, and there are different schemes and different literatures available on how to improve the power quality. Now, what is the definition of power quality? So what do we mean by power quality? Power quality is the electrical network's ability to supply clean and stable power. Now, what is poor power quality? What do we say it is a poor power quality? The sufficient deviation in the power supply to cause the equipment failure, that I can call it as a poor power quality. Now, what is a good power quality? It is sufficient to make the equipment to work satisfactorily, that I can call it as a good power quality. So these are all the definitions that are available for power quality. So different authors have given different explanations for power quality, and one author has said any power problem manifested in voltage, current or frequency that results in failure or misoperation of customer equipment is what they call it as power quality, and they identify the power quality problems. And why these power quality problems occurs? What are the causes of poor power quality, especially in an age where we are living in a distributed generation resources? What are all the main causes for poor power quality? What are the things that deteriorate the power quality? The main thing is the fact that we use modern utilities. We use a lot of computer systems. The computer systems use SMPS. We use LED lamps, and we have a lot of power electronic interfaces. Okay, so all these things, the utility that we are going to use in our household is changing, and these are susceptible to disturbances. That is what we need to understand. The utilities that we are using in day-to-day life are changing, and because of that change, the utility are susceptible to disturbances. So that means we need to have, or we need to provide a cleaner power. So what happens when you see the current and voltage waveform? There will be a distortion. There will be a variation in the lamps, and because of this, what happens? There will be a impact on the power quality. That is a very important thing. Another thing is we use arc furnaces. There may be large motors which are connected to the loads, and there may be faults in the network, and these are the reasons for poor power quality. These are the reasons that are attributed for the poor power quality. And when you list the sources why power quality issues occur, okay, one is because of the lighting. Some power faction correction equipment itself might cause some power quality issues, faults, and switching. When you do switching operation, that might be a power quality issues. And internal sources can be an individual loads, lighting ballast, or arc welding equipment or medical equipment also cause power quality issues. And similarly, power electronic sources, we use variable frequency drives, battery chargers. It is battery chargers, smart grids, electronic dimming system, microgrids, and large motors causes power quality issues. So these are the sources of power quality issues. And generally, this is what we infer from the power quality issues. We refer to the voltage waveform quality, where is the variation in the magnitude, unbalance in the waveforms, harmonics that occurs, flicker might occur, variation in frequency, there may be a swell, there may be a transient, there may be a sudden spike, there may be an interruption in the waveform. All these things are attributed to poor power quality. And all these things are going to affect your industries, or it is going to affect the factories. Suppose a data center which is using UPS, if there is an intermittent supply or if there is a fault in the SMPS, then again the backup will be a problem. So there are certain standards for operating each and every equipment. If the input to the equipment is not satisfactory, or if the power quality is poor, it might cause damage to the equipments. So there might be loss to the customers. Not only loss to the customers, as well as loss to the company as well. So these are all the important aspects of power quality problems. So this is again a summary of what are all the different problems that can occur. It can be a transient, it can be over voltage, it can be under voltage, it can be waveform distortion. These are all the different combinations. So what are all the facilities that are affected by power quality? Every industry is affected by means of poor power quality. Automotive industry is affected, semiconductor plants is affected, data center is worst affected because now a lot of switching take place. Chemical industry, textile industry, almost all the facilities, smart grids, microgrids, all the facilities are affected by poor power quality. So it is very important to ensure that we provide quality power to the end users or to the customers. So that is very important. Now, how do I ensure that? Now, there has been a lot of solutions that are available. Now, how to go about the solution? How to arrive at the solution for power quality problem? So, first you should evaluate the problem. What are the causes that can occur in a particular setup? Suppose if you take a factory, you need to do a study and you need to analyze what are the different power quality problems that can occur. Then you can characterize the problem, what effect it has on the equipments, what are the characteristics, what changes it does, and then you identify the range of solutions, what are the possible solutions that are possible to avoid the power quality problem. Then you evaluate the solution, what are all the feasible solutions, then you arrive at an optimal solution. So this is how we try to mitigate. Then you use active filters, or you use spinning reserve, or you use STATCOM and all those things. But there has to be an evaluation of the power quality problem, and then we identify what are all the problem category that occurs. Then depending upon the problem category, then we need to find out the solutions, find out the optimal solutions to overcome the power quality problems. So this is very important. Now, before going to the last step, that is to find out the optimal solution, the first and foremost thing is we need to identify what are all the power quality problems that occur in a particular setup. How to do that? Only if you know the power quality problem, only if you know it is a sag, we can improve the voltage. If it is a swell, we can have a variation in the voltage, we can decrease the voltage, or we can have some protection. Suppose if there is an interruption, then we can go for, say, energy storage devices as backup. Like that we can have, or we can go for some solutions. Now, what is the first step? The first step is you need to identify the problem. You need to identify the problem. How to identify the problem is what I am going to talk in today's session. Now, how to identify whether it is a sag, whether it is a swell, whether it is a transient or whether it is an interruption. Only if you identify the problem, we can give solutions to the problem. Okay, whether you can add energy storage or whatever solutions may be, only we can give solutions to the problem. So how to identify the problem? How are we going to say whether a sag has occurred, whether a swell has occurred? It is going to be very important. That is where machine learning techniques have gained importance. Machine learning classifiers have gained importance. So what is our job? Whenever you give a waveform to a computer or to a control algorithm, it should say whether it is a normal waveform or whether it is a sag or whether it is a swell or whether it is an interruption. Like that it needs to say. It's just like face detection. How we are recognizing our friend's face. Similar to that, when we give an input to a system or to a control, it should say whether the operation is normal or the operation is satisfactory or the operation is not satisfactory. So how are we going to do that? It's just like an image recognition that is stored in our brain and how the brain is processing it, and we are able to identify the person who is in front of us. So that is the similar thing that we are going to discuss. Now how it is being done? So what we need to do? First we need to capture the data, then we need to classify it, then we need to go for alarm tripping or some other thing, then we need to go for predictive grid analytics. So these are all what they call it as layers. What are the layers? You capture the data. What do you mean by capturing data? You capture the waveform. Once you capture the waveform, you analyze the waveform and say whether it is a sag, whether it is a swell, and then you go for protective action. Then you go for predictive grid analytics. That is, you go for whether it is a recloser or whether it is some, you can take some mitigation action depending upon it. So we focus on, in this lecture, I will focus on the first two things, raw data capture and classification. Now, how are we going to classify the power quality events? There are two stages. One, you have a waveform that is coming to you, or coming to a factory or industry or a control center or a data center, that you need to process. That stage is called as feature extraction. Once you extract the features, you will be able to classify and you will be able to say the results. Okay, the feature extraction is just like remembering our friends. Okay, how do we remember our friends? He will be tall, he will be short, he will be having a curly hair, he will be having a long hair, like that. It's what we call it as feature extraction. So what are all the features? The features are nothing but which characterize the waveform is what we call it as features. I have a waveform. How do we characterize a sine wave is what I call it as a feature. Once we characterize a waveform, we can classify it easily. Okay, we can just relate it to our day-to-day application wherein it's like image processing or image recognition or friends recognition. Now, the power quality data is available. Okay, we need to first get those data and we need to train the model. Okay, only if it's similar to that for brain, as I said, only if you recognize, only if you store the data, we'll be able to recognize it. So for that, IEEE has shared several power quality events, or you can also simulate the power quality events. There is a website wherein there are different power quality events that are stored in a website. Okay, this is one thing that I have taken from an IEEE website. Okay, there they are sharing all the power quality data, all the power quality waveforms. So this is the transient that has occurred. Now the transient might be occurred because of some failures, but the system should recognize that it is a transient. So that is our main purpose, and then take a corrective action depending upon the transient. So there are two ways. One, we can take the data from power quality recorders, or we can simulate the data using MATLAB, and then what we can do is we can generate the data. The first step is we need to train the model. What is meant by training? We need to give the inputs and make the system recognize that if such an input comes, it is going to be a normal waveform. If there is variation in the voltage, it is going to be a sag waveform. Like that, we need to train the system. Okay, so now there are two stages. Now we can ask, what is the problem in training the system? Because all these power quality events vary with respect to time and vary with respect to frequency. So it's not enough just to analyze the amplitude part alone. You need to analyze the frequency aspect alone. So that is where time frequency transformation plays a very important role. The waveforms are time varying signals. The power quality waveforms are time varying signals. Whenever a signal is going to be time varying, you need to do a time frequency transformation. Only if you do the time frequency transformation, we will get the exact frequency components. Only if we get the exact frequency components, we can say whether it is a harmonic waveform, or we can say whether it is a normal waveform, or whether it is a sag waveform, whether it is a swell waveform. The point that I am trying to say is, it is not that I need to know only the amplitude. I also need to know the frequency component of the signal in order to classify the signal. So that is why your feature extraction operates on time frequency techniques, time frequency transformation techniques. So there are different time frequency transformation techniques that are available in literature. So any one time frequency transformation technique you can use. It is like feature extraction. As I am trying to relate it with a face recognition system, you give a you have a unknown person, you come to know him recently, you recognize him by some features. So that is what is similar to that of your feature extraction. You give a waveform, you extract the features. What are all the features that I will say now? And then you go for classification. Again, in classification, you have a lot of classifiers called as machine learning classifiers, which tend to classify the power quality events. It will just say whether it is a sag or whether it is a swell or it is an interruption. So when you have designed a system, you give an input, the system will automatically say whether it is a normal waveform or whether it is a interruption waveform. So there are different classifiers that are available. Now this is how the exact setup will be. Okay, your program or your coding in MATLAB and hardware implementation will be like this. You give PQ disturbances. The PQ disturbances will be taken to the S transform, and the S transform will extract the features. What is the features? Features are nothing but statistical values. Statistical values that operates on the feature extraction techniques. And then it gives it to a classifier. Classifier is a machine learning classifier, or it can be a simple if-then rules that will tend to classify the data. So, for example, I have given F1, F2, F3, and F4. Okay, it's just a mathematical values. You can go for mean, you can go for standard deviation, anything. But these values should characterize the event. That is very important. These values should characterize the event. So that is what is called as feature extraction. So there are different things that are different transformation techniques that are available. Okay, we call it as a Fourier transform. The main thing in Fourier, the main thing, as I said already, is whenever I have a signal, I need to resolve it into both time domain as well as frequency domain. For example, I have different signals. One signal frequency is 5 Hertz, one signal is 25 Hertz, one signal is 50 Hertz. Now, the Fourier transform will be able to identify the frequencies. What are the frequency components that are present in the signal? But what happens is, when I combine those signals, it will say the frequency component, but at what time instant the frequency component is present, it will not be able to say. That is the major disadvantage of Fourier transform. I'll just repeat. When I give a signal, Fourier transform will identify the frequency component, but the time at which all those frequency components will be present will not be available, will not be revealed. Okay, we will not be able to know. That is very important in time frequency transform, because whenever we have a harmonic waveform, we need to know the frequency component, and we also need to know the time at which the harmonic component has occurred, as well as the amplitude. All these informations are very vital. But a Fourier transform cannot provide simultaneous time and frequency localization, but it provides excellent localization in time domain. Okay, with respect to the excellent localization in frequency domain, but poor localization with respect to time domain. Okay, so this is not useful for time variant non-stationary signals. So they went for short-term Fourier transform. In short-term Fourier transform, they had a window. They will slide this window over the waveform, and they will try to extract the information such that it provides both time and frequency values. But the problem is how to choose the window width. The window width is fixed. When I choose this is what we call it as window width. when the window width is larger, the accuracy will be different. When the window width is lesser, the accuracy will be different. So the problem in short time Fourier transform is how to choose the window width. That is why they went for S transform or wavelet transform. This is how a short time Fourier transform operates. You choose a window length, place the window on top of the signal, and then you truncate the signal, and then you extract the features. So this is how STFT operates. Like this. The window will traverse to the entire thing. The window will traverse and it will extract the information. But the window size is going to be the problem. The window size is going to be the problem. Wide window provides good frequency resolution, but a narrow window provides a good time resolution. Then they went for a S transform. In a S transform, what happens is they made the window width as variable quantities. The window width will be varying, and they try to extract the information. And this provided a good time frequency localization. So one of the techniques that is widely used for S transform is for feature extraction is S transform. Similarly, they also used a technique called as wavelet transform. Wavelet transform is also very widely used. So what you do, you have a sine wave, you apply S transform to the sine wave, you get a matrix, or you apply wavelet transform to the sine wave, you get a matrix. Okay, so that is, you operate some mathematical rules on the matrix. That is what we call it as features. Similarly, there is one more transform also called as Hilbert transform. We can also use a Hilbert transform. And this slide gives us a comparison between the different feature extraction techniques. And one example I'll just show for a Hilbert transform. How do we do all these things? Everything is in MATLAB. How do we do all these things? For a Hilbert transform is again one of the time frequency techniques. What we do, you generate a sine wave and you apply Hilbert. There is a direct command. You apply a Hilbert. Okay, you'll get a matrix. To that matrix, you can apply mathematical operations and you can extract the features. For a sine wave, the features will be different. For a sag, it will be different. For a swell, it will be different. Like this, you can also write it for S transform. All these things are all these things are available in MATLAB. Just for illustration, I am saying. So you generate a waveform, or you can have a waveform that is taken from a IEEE library. After you take a waveform, what you tend to do is you apply a Hilbert transform or you apply S transform and take the features. Now, what is F1, F2? F1, F2 are the features. What does the feature do? The feature will be different for different waveforms. This is one. For sag, it will be different. For swell, it will be different. So what happens? A system can recognize if F1, F2, F3 are these values. What happens? We can call them as a sag. If F1, F2, F3, F4 are in this particular range, we can call them as a swell. Like this, we are going to train the network. If-then rules is also possible. That is called as rule-based classifiers. But sometimes when the values are too closer, the accuracy will not be there. That is why they go for a machine learning based classifiers. Okay, so this is the first part. Now, what is the first part? First part is the feature extraction. What is feature extraction? You get the values that characterize the waveform. That is what I call it as feature extraction. How do we do that? You generate the waveform either by simulation, or you take a waveform from a library, apply S transform to it or apply Hilbert transform to it, and take statistical analysis from that particular matrix that gives your what? That gives your features extracted. That gives your features. What is these features? These features are characterizing your waveform. So now you have features. Now what you have? Now you have a setup like this. I have a data with inputs. I have applied feature extraction. Now I have data, and I have say 1000 data. 1000 data is split into 250 data for sag, 250 data for swell, 250 data for interruption. Then I split that data into training set and testing set, and then I train my model. Okay, training is very important. That is where your machine learning classifiers work. What is this data that I have? The data is my features. How do I extract the features? I extract the features with the help of time frequency transformation technique. So I have a feature, I can have 4 feature, I can have 5 feature. And what do I do with the feature? I take that feature into the model. Now why should I take the features into the model? Only if I take the features into the model, I'll just try to predict it. Okay, what the model will do? Model is similar to that of my brain. What the brain will do? Brain is going to recognize. What it is going to recognize? If the values are like this, what the event is going to be a sag. If the values are this, the event is going to be a swell. So it is going to predict. There are different algorithms. There are different algorithms that are available. So that is where you might have also come across all these things. I'll just rush through this. So you can have different types of machine learning. What we tend to do is a supervised learning, okay, which is used for different applications. There are 2 things in machine learning. One, we call it as a regression. Other, we call it as a classification. What is a regression? Regression means like if I want to predict the addition value, 1 plus 1, 2, 2 plus 2, 4, 4 plus 4, 8, that type of thing is what I call it as regression. What is classification? If this is the waveform, this is going to be sag. That is what we call it as classification. So you can have a supervised learning, you can have an unsupervised learning, or you can also go for a reinforcement learning. Now what is supervised learning? We have a set of inputs and we train the machine to recognize them as cats or as not cats. Similarly, we train the network with a different data to recognize them into the sag or swell or like that. We will be able to recognize. So in this diagram, if you see, we train the network with cat images. Now, when one image comes as a dog, the machine will be able to say it is not a cat. So that is what we call it as a machine learning process, or we call it as a supervised learning. Similarly, the machine learning algorithm, once we trained it, it will be able to differentiate between a sag and a swell. Okay, because we have trained the network. Okay, so that is what train the network for classification, right? What is unsupervised learning? We have unknown inputs. There is no training data. Okay, so based on some interpretation, it will cluster the outputs. So that is what we call it as unsupervised learning. But generally, we follow supervised learning here. Now, what happens? This is what I said. So when you give an input, so it is going to classify whether it is a dog or whether it is a cat. Okay, when I present the image of a dog, it is going to classify it as a dog. Okay, this is a simple example to identify that it is a particular event. So the same thing holds good for our event also. How do it does it? It takes the features of the dog and it has trained it. Now, if I present an image of a dog, it will again extract the features and try to match with the already stored data, and it will say the features are resembling with the dog, so output is going to be a dog, right? And there is one recent technique that we call it as deep learning. Now, what we do in machine learning is we provide an input, we extract the features, and we classify them, and we will say them whether it is a dog or it is a not dog, or whether it is a cat or a bird, like that it will classify, or whether it is a sag or a swell. But what is deep learning? All these feature extraction and classification will be done by a single network itself. That is what I call it as deep learning network. So that is the difference between deep learning as well as machine learning. So you can apply either machine learning algorithms, or you can also go for deep learning algorithms. So this is actually the difference. Now I'll just try to tell about one particular classifier, which I call it as a support vector machine classifier. There are different classifiers. Just to give you an idea how a support vector machine works, I'll just try to tell you. Now again, the support vector machine is a supervised algorithm which is used for classification. Now how a support vector algorithm works? I'll just take an example. Suppose we are going to classify fruits as oranges and apples. Now how do we do that? We have got a weight and size. We classify them with the help of weight and size. Now what is this weight and size? This weight and size are my features. Similar to what we said in power quality event classification, this weight and size are my features. What is weight? Weight of an orange and weight of an apple. What is size? Size of an orange, size of an apple. We have different apples, take different apple varieties, different orange varieties, and we cluster them, and we tell the machine to recognize if the weight is greater than this 72. I am keeping this, if the weight is greater than 70 and if the size is greater than 5, it is classified as apples. If it is below this, it is classified as oranges. So this is what I mean by classification. I am going to classify two things, whether it is going to be apple or whether it is going to be orange. And then how do I am going to do it? I am going to do this with the help of features. What are the features here? The features are going to be weight and size. Now how am I going to separate this? I am going to draw a line that will help in separating oranges and apples. So that is what is the entire idea of support vector machine. Now what the support vector machine is, it tends to draw the hyperplane that is optimal. Now suppose when I draw a line here, say from 4.75 to 70, it is not going to be an optimal one, because it did not try to differentiate between oranges and apples. Only if I draw a line here, it is able to separate it between apples and oranges. So that is what we call it as hyperplane. And how it does? It does with the help of the support vectors. So these two, this point that I am showing and this point that I am showing is what I call it as support vectors. So with the help of support vectors, I am going to draw an optimal hyperplane. This optimal hyperplane will be able to distinguish the apples and oranges. Okay, so the idea of support vector machine is, how am I going to draw this line? We have, say, two groups. One is going to be a star, other is going to be a circle. So only if I draw a line here, it will be able to optimally divide these two. Suppose I can draw lines in any fashion. I can draw lines in any fashion, but all the lines will not be optimal. There will be only one line that is optimal, that is used to classify it accurately. That is what we call it as support vector machine. Again, this support vector machine can be solved in MATLAB. There is a command that is available. So for that, what I need to have, I can have a data set, they call it as training data set. What is this training data set say? I have different weights and sizes, and this different weight and sizes will indicate whether the fruit is going to be orange or whether the fruit is going to be apple. So this is what I call it as training data. Right? Now we will try to relate this with our application. So what is our training data? Our training data will be the features. Where do we extract the features? We extract the features from S transform or Hilbert transform. So what is our training data? Our training data is features. What is our output? Our output is going to be a power quality event. Okay, so there is a direct command that is available in, you have a command called as svm train. Now what this svm train does is svm train, okay, will be able to, is svm train, how am I going to give it? svm train of training set comma group train. What is group train? Group train is the classifier, and then I'll train it. Once the support vector machine is trained, once if I give the command, it will try to arrive at the optimal hyperplane. Now, how do I know whether the system has learned it or not? Okay, I'll give some unknown inputs. And test it. When it is able to correctly classify it, we can say that the SVM has correctly classified. Okay. Now, how do it creates it? If you have a training set, you have a testing set. Okay. When I have 250 samples, 200 samples I will use for training and 50 samples I will use for testing. And then I will train the data, and then I will check with the test data. I will check with the unknown inputs, and I will check it with the test data, and to see whether the classification is correct or not. Okay, I hope I am making you understand. So it is a simple thing. All these things are available in MATLAB, and SVM gives the optimal hyperplane. How to do that? I'll again repeat. You'll have features. The features are nothing but weight and size, and you'll have the outputs. So first we should train the network with the known inputs and known outputs, and then once the network is trained, we need to give the unknown inputs and check it. So all these things are available in MATLAB. Okay, that is why I have given this command itself. Okay, so you can use these commands directly in MATLAB, and you can test this, and you can able to classify, and you can calculate the error between actual and predicted. That is what we call it as a classification accuracy. So this is how they do in power quality event classification. So they extract the features, give it to a machine learning algorithm, and then they train the network till the accuracy is reached, till all the classes are accurately classified, or the accuracy is around 95% or 98%. Okay, and this is the basic idea behind hyperplane. Okay, and I'll just give you an example. Now, when there are data like this, okay, when we have a data, okay, in this fashion, which is not linearly separable, we can, because by drawing a particular line, we cannot separate between these two data. Now we need to go for a function called as kernel function. Okay, this kernel function will transform them into a higher dimension, and then it will try to classify. Okay, suppose if there is a data like this, okay, if there is a data which is in this particular fashion, we cannot draw a line. Now to draw a line, what we tend to do is, we tend to have a kernel function. Kernel function is similar to, now we convert this x value as y, where y is equal to x square, and then we can draw a hyperplane. For example, if these yellow lines are 1, if these yellow lines are 1, 2, and 3, again, if these blue lines, what I show is -1, -2, and -3, you have a function as y is equal to x square, and then if you plot the function, then we will be able to separate those two classes. So this is how it is done for non-linear cases. This is how it is done for a non-linear cases. Okay, and similarly, if I have a multiple classes, okay, because in power quality events, if I have multiple classes, then again there is one technique, and this is the diagram that illustrates the kernel function. So you have a data, you have a kernel function, the kernel function will transform it to a higher dimension and make it easier for classification. Okay, so there are different kernel functions available. You can choose one depending upon the application, and then you can apply. Now, if there are more than one classes, how SVM will recognize? Suppose if there is sag, swell, and interruption, what it will do is it will create different models. One model will be for sag, other model will be for swell, another model will be for interruption. So model 1 will recognize only sag, other model will be treated as a same class. Similarly, model 2 will concentrate only on swell. Similarly, model 3 will concentrate only on interruption. Okay, like this, we can have different models in SVM and make the classifier. So this is how it does for a multi-class classification. So in a multi-class classification, we have many classes and different models will be created, and based on the models, what happens? The classes will be separated. Okay. Now, to summarize what I have done in this particular session, there are different power quality events, there are different mitigation actions that are available, but for understanding the mitigation action or to initiate the mitigation action, we should first identify the nature of disturbances. To identify the nature of disturbances, first we need to classify the disturbances. Only if you classify the disturbances, we can take corrective action. To classify the disturbances, first we need to have the disturbances either by simulation or from practical data. From the disturbances, you apply feature extraction, get the features, and once you apply the features, you can use any machine learning algorithms to classify it. And you can also select the features. Okay, it is not that you need to select 30 or 40 features. You can select what feature that describes the disturbances. Then you can classify. After classification only, we can take the mitigation action. We can initiate the mitigation action. We can arrive at the optimal solution. Okay, so this is what I wanted to convey. The power quality is an important problem, but to understand the events, first we need to do all these process, and depending upon the events, only we can have the classification. And these are all the references that I have followed. Okay, hope I have conveyed what I wanted to convey. So my point is, there are different classification techniques, there are different feature extraction techniques, and you can apply those techniques and have an efficient classification. And there is one group that is evolved in IEEE, which is called as Power Quality Data Analytics. So everywhere we talk about here about the term data analytics, there is also definitely data analytics in Power Quality, and they have also formed a group and they are giving all these data. These data we can work upon and we can evolve the classification algorithm that better classifies the nature of the disturbances. As I have been keep on saying, only if we classify the nature of the disturbances, we can know what amount of capacitor bank we should add. For example, if the sag is 20%, then the capacitance bank will be added accordingly. Similarly, if there is a swell, what corrective action has to be taken place. So that is why this research is interesting. It is not only for power quality, you can apply it for any fault diagnosis of machines, you can apply the same thing. Okay, fault diagnosis of electric vehicles, you can also apply fault diagnosis of inverters, fault diagnosis of converters. All these things you can apply the same thing. And for all these things, time frequency techniques is common because all our signals are time varying signals or non-stationary signals. For non-stationary signals, you definitely need to go for time frequency transformation, and it is again related with the image processing. How we are able to recognize our friends? The same thing, we are giving intelligence to the system to recognize the different events. Okay, with this I am winding up, and I thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity. Hope the session would have been useful for you. Thank you. And there is a question that I can see. Feature extraction can be done in Python as well as R software, but for our applications, this is better. MATLAB will be better, I think, because the Hilbert, I don't know much about it, but you can do it. But classification part, you can do it in Python. But feature extraction, I have come across only in MATLAB. I have not used Python. For classification, I have used Python. Next question is, which supervised learning gives better results? It's just a comparison. For one type of data, ELM will be best. ELM stands for Extreme Learning Machine. Other type of data, support vector machine will be best. So again, you can do a comparative study. It all depends on how much training set that I have and how much test set that I have. Yes, definitely I will share the PPT to the organizers and they will forward it to you.
Any queries, participants? If you have any questions, you can ask. No more questions, it seems, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Balaji sir,
Thank you
for your valuable presentation in the new area machine learning techniques for PQ disturbance analysis. You have explained the future extraction technology, Fourier transform, wavelet transform, Hilbert transform, the types of machine learning, which is supervised and unsupervised learning, deep learning, and the new one, support vector machine. Briefly explain the utilize your session of playing, so learn so many things. I sincerely thank your full effort. Thank you,
thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you all. Congratulations to all the participants for participating in this webinar. Thank you, ma'am. I'll stop sharing. I'll give you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir, for your nice presentation. Thank you, Nakul.
Thank you, ma'am.
Dear participants, thank you for listening patiently to this webinar session. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Dear participants, thank you very much for your cooperation till the second day has completed. With your cooperation only, my request is to join as per we have planned the sessions. Morning session per day, 3 sessions. Session 1 in the morning, 10:30 to 11:30, and session 2 in the afternoon, 4 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and session 3 from 3 to 4. You kindly join the time for, then only we can complete as we wish. Otherwise, extend. Kind cooperation Two session, kindly join around 10:20. Two professors will be handling for the 3 sessions. One will be Dr. M.P. Selvam sir, NIT Trichy, and Professor Dr. Somasundar University. So I have mentioned the sessions. Kindly come and join the sessions at that particular time. Thank you very much for your kind question during the topic you are attending, even though we are